know at like what second it actually is live. I never know like what word it catches me live, but I think we're live. I do believe
it says live.
It says live, so I believe, and 4 people are tuned in, which is awesome. So, hello everybody. Thanks for joining us on this live stream. Now that we know for a fact we are live, I have my friend Hell's Bells here. But first, we're gonna play our super awesome theme song. So hang tight. All right. One of these days, I'll figure out how to not lose a viewer during the theme song. One of these days, I'll figure out how to get them to stay through the whole thing.
Technology's hard.
It is. It is. But Helen, Hell's Bells, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm super stoked to have you on the show, especially for a live stream. I feel like I've never met you in person, but I feel like I have, even though I imagine you're probably taller than me and I'm probably shorter than you think, just because that tends to be how it goes when I meet people in real life. They're always taller
How tall
than
are you?
I'm 5'3".
I'm 5'3 3/4", so I'm just like just shy of 3'4", 5'4", yeah.
Maybe it's because like your personality. I just always assumed you'd be like 5'6", 5'7".
Oh no, I'm a munchkin. Well, average. I think I'm average for female. So
I always think I'm average too, and then people are like, "Oh, you are so short." So, but I'll take that. I'll take average.
Okay. Yeah.
But enough for me. I'm so excited to hear your story. It's a wild one. Just hit us with it. So you were raised Catholic, right?
Yes.
That's kind of how you got your, okay. I was about to say that's how you got your start, as if that's like a
singer.
My
start.
Yeah. That's how you came to fame. But your life has since segued very far from there. How did that happen?
I was brought up in a traditional French Catholic home. My mom, she had grown up French Catholic, and her parents were French Catholic, and it's just like it's just generational, so you're, like most religions, you follow the faith of your family. And my dad, he was raised Methodist, and my father, he has a very strong interest in science and rational thinking, but he has well, there must be a God, to explain like things. Like he's practical, but I think being around the influence of my mother, and plus he grew up as a Methodist, and his parents, and my grandpa was Muslim.
I was going to say, I was about to say exactly what Look at the Tree said. So French Catholic, other than the language, what makes French Catholic different than what we know to be Catholic?
Because Quebec is very Catholic. So it's actually part of their national identity to be Catholic. It was brought over from the immigrants that came from Europe. Yeah. So it's actually rarer for you to follow another religion in Quebec, based on just the populace. And and I grew up in New Hampshire, so that's a hop, skip, and jump from Quebec. Yeah. So and my mom moved down here in the early 50s. My dad in 54, and they married in 56. So interesting. So my mom took, and her sister was living here in the States, and I think one of her brothers moved here. I don't know. The family history is long and complicated. So
yeah,
we come from big families.
Right. So Muslim grandfather on your dad's side.
Yes.
Who became Methodist.
Yes.
And by the way, Methodists are like the cool Christians. Like I've never had beef with a Methodist.
I've never been a bad Methodist.
Yeah, I've never been. And then French Canadian Catholic mother.
Yes.
While raised in New Hampshire.
Yes.
Okay, so that's wild. And so now you are a humanist, atheist, activist. And I'm so curious, but there's so much in between. Like I know it, but the audience doesn't know it. How do you go from being raised in like a French Catholic / Methodist family in like the because New Hampshire is kind of out. I don't want to say middle of nowhere, but New Hampshire is kind of like woodsy, right? A little rural.
It depends where you are. Like if you're south of Tilton, okay, like I'm expecting you to know where Tilton is, by the way, Sydney, even though you
Perfect.
don't know.
I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, you know where Tilton is.
For this.
If you're south of it, that tends to be more populated. The further north you go, you're going to get into like the woodsy areas where the White Mountains are, you know, and like, you know, little, you know, bumfuck towns and that type of stuff. So we have like what we call northern rednecks. So the Yankees,
perfect. Love
you
it.
know,
Yep.
way in the north.
Yep.
So, but if you're closer to Boston, and that's where a lot of Manchester, technically, we've been saying should be the capital of New Hampshire, but it's Concord, because that's where all of our commerce is, all the money, like the mills, the textile mills, and mass production that was in the United States at the turn of the 20th century, and the industrial movement that happened a lot in New England. So because Massachusetts is so close and we're right on the river, so that's where most of the money is. We have an airport, like Manchester has an airport. Yeah. You know, that type of stuff. So
I love how you look. That's where the money is. For example, an airport, which being from Northwest Arkansas, I actually feel that. I'm like,
right.
Holy shit.
Like everybody that's ever been on it, like LAX or living in Texas, like, why? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. Yet.
When we got a flight that went directly to Chicago from Northwest Arkansas with no layovers, it was a big deal. It was a big deal.
That's a big thing. If you can fly, because it's 3 hours if you fly from Florida to New Hampshire, and if you can get a direct flight, it's the best.
Yes. So, were you raised in Catholic schools? Were you?
Yes, I went to Catholic school. I went to Catholic school till 7th grade, which is weird because usually they'll pick like junior high transition or you're going to high school. But my parents, they were like, well, we have to get her adjusted to go to a public school. So they did 8th grade. So
interesting.
Yeah, but I went to Catholic school, went to services during school. We had religion class, and we also had a science class. They were separate. So
That's cool. Yeah,
so that's why and also my dad would buy me like encyclopedia sets when he like I can tell how old you are if you remember the Encyclopedia Britannica commercials.
Yes.
If you remember those. Yeah, there we go. I had a set and I would absorb it. My parents would buy me like science magazines, and we would go on loved when we could go on field trips, and because my school did that. We went to wildlife preserves and we went into the mountains and learned about the environment and stuff like that. That was part of because the way the school was set up, they still had to follow the state's curriculum in the 80s. It was a Catholic school, it was private. They could have a religion class. So you were taught theology and religion, but your science class had to make state standards.
That's interesting. I've never heard of that because you know, we talk to a ton of religious people when you're like, I was in school and also taught science, and I'm like, wow, that is so surprising.
Yeah,
interesting. Is that like a New Hampshire thing, or was that just a different?
I don't know if it's New Hampshire's pretty liberal, so I think it is a state thing. I don't know what it is now. Because this was the 80s. This was before everything, tits went tits up. So it was in the 80s. I don't know where it is now. The school that I went to, Westside Catholic, I don't think exists anymore. The church is still there.
Yeah.
But I don't think the school is still there.
Got it.
And St. Marie's, which is it's one of the, like, if you see a picture of it, there's just like this huge steeple in New Hampshire. In Manchester. It's a beautiful church. Like it is. It's super pretty. There's a lot of murals on the ceilings. It's all hand painted. It's very pretty. And I still get a little like emotional about it even though I'm not religious anymore. I'm like, it's that church.
Yeah. And Catholic churches are beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's where all the money is.
Right. I've never seen a plain Catholic church. They're always just gorgeous, stained glass windows. So I feel that for sure.
Yeah, there's a reason why people like when even if they're secular, they'll go, like, everybody goes to St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. Everybody goes. Like, if you're secular, even if you're not even Catholic, you're just a Jew. It's like, let's go see the cathedral because it's a tourist stop.
Yeah, it's a work of art.
It's a beautiful cathedral. So I get it. So then, so I was brought up in Catholic school, and then I went to public school in 8th grade, which was a big benefit actually, because before, yes, I had a science class, and my elementary school education was pretty decent, but I didn't get diagnosed and help with my ADHD until I got into 8th grade.
Wow.
Yeah,
interesting.
Because I really struggled with school when I was growing up.
Do you think it's because like the school didn't want to acknowledge it existed, or do you think it's because just public schools have better resources for tracking?
It was a lack of resources, and also too, like when you don't have like an outside education board that is setting up like IEP programs,
yes,
and things like that, those resources aren't available to students. So and also in the 80s we were kind of understanding what ADHD was and is, but it was still not a thing where kids were actually getting resources and help with. So, and then that really took off in the early 90s, you know, when we had more research and studies, and and medications were becoming available to people. So during that time, I get it. Like, my parents didn't know. My parents are older. They just thought I need to pay attention, which is, if you tell a ADHD person to pay attention, you might as well tell us to, go stand in traffic. It's counteractive to how we think. And I'm just like, no, I'm like, really pay attention? Really? Oh, thanks.
Yeah. The worst thing an adult could have said to me back then was sit still. Because then I was like hypersensitive to the fact that I was sitting. Am I sitting still enough? Is this, and then you're like twitching, and then, Yeah,
and but once I got into public school, I wasn't put on meds, but I was given resources. Like, there was a resource room I could go to where I got extra help with my homework. I had access to tutors. There was a guidance counselor in an office for, your 12, 13-year-old. It's good to have somebody to talk to.
Definitely.
And so that type of stuff was available. And also during that time, especially when I entered high school, because I got exposed to people that were Buddhists or atheists or Protestant or a little bit of a gambit of different religions or lack thereof. But my parents never said I couldn't hang out with someone that had a different faith than me or no faith. Like, I could just make friends. Yeah. And even like, I had one friend that they were like Baptist, and they got a little extreme. My mom and my parents did not want me going to their church, because one time, I think I was like 14, 15 years old. And it's one of those Fundie churches where it's like a little room with maybe like 40 chairs at the top of this like makeshift church or something like that. Okay, so it was one of those. And I don't know, I had gone a few times with my friend, because one of the rules was like, if she slept over at my house, I would go to her church. And then if she slept over at my church on, like, it was Saturday to Sunday, she would come to church with my family. Okay. Which I found weird, because their parents were like very Baptist. And I'm like, you're going to let them go to a Catholic church? Okay. So where my parents
she can learn how to talk to demons.
Yeah. Like, my parents were more laissez-faire about it. So when I went to her church, I don't know how he found out I was Catholic. Probably got mentioned in passing by like her parents or something like that.
They could smell it on you.
They could smell it, yeah. And
smell the incense.
And I didn't go every Sunday. Like, sometimes I would it'd be like months would go by, and then I would just pop up, And I remember he started doing this like fire and brimstone sermon about
the
Catholics. The preacher, yeah. He started going into about like Catholics are going to go to hell. They don't understand the real meaning of Jesus' sacrifice and all that type of stuff. Yeah. And I was like, looking around, and I'm like, oh, he's talking to me.
Wow.
So I went home and I told my mom, and my parents were like, yeah, you can't go back there.
Yeah, no, of course not.
Yeah.
That's and like how weird do you have to be to like pick on a kid too?
Right.
Like how strange. There's so many ways to handle that, and that's one, not his business, and two, a very weird way to handle it.
And that's what's so interesting to me about it, because I'm surprised anyone would want to like I'm a 14-year-old girl. Like why do you care, that my parent, like I was raised Catholic? Like, yeah, I don't understand.
You probably looked like you're having too much fun.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, like, there's Catholic guilt. There's a lot of things wrong with the Catholic Church, and stuff like that. But I think because my family was very accepting of differences, that type of stuff didn't affect me. Like someone would tell me they're Buddhist. I'd be like, okay. Someone would tell me they're Methodist. I'm like, okay. I have plenty of friends who are Mormons. There's a good Mormon population in New Hampshire too. And
there's one in Arkansas too. I don't know.
Yeah. And I had a lot of friends who were Mormons. One of my friends is an ex-Mormon, and we're both the same age, and we're still friends. I mean, chit chat, and we've been friends since high school. It's one of those things that I just didn't really think about it, because I was just like, okay, everybody has their own beliefs, and this is when you tell yourself, like, everybody has their own truth.
Yes. Everyone, they get to make their own decisions, but ours is the right one. So just keep making this decision, and you'll be good. And so, as you were being raised Catholic and being confronted with these other thoughts and religions and lifestyles, how much did you believe Catholicism? Was it super ingrained in you? Was it just kind of meh? Was it just you did it because your parents wanted you to? What do you remember thinking at that point?
I think I had from a young age the problem with the structure. Like I wanted to, like, obviously as a kid, because you're indoctrinated since you're like a baby,
literally,
and but even they taught, like, the Bible's not literal, like, the earth is obviously not 6,000 years old. These are metaphoric stories to teach us morals. I mean, like, they did believe in Jesus' sacrifice and stuff.
Right. That's interesting, though.
But the Catholic Church also promotes science.
Yes.
So, they just think, like, God pooped evolution into existence. That's, he was the kickstart. God was the Kickstarter of evolution. So that's why it's very easy for Catholics to go, nope, that's not science. Nope, that's not science. Because
I had no idea.
You can have both. Yeah, you can have both. There are fundamental Catholics, but those are not as prevalent as, like, your casual Catholic, like you go to church on Sunday.
Casual Catholic.
Or,
that's cool.
Yeah, you go at Easter or Christmas, because also too, like, compared to like Fundie religions, the Catholic Church isn't keeping track of you if you don't go to church.
Right.
Nobody's paying attention to you.
Meanwhile, Fundie churches are like, where were you? And they're like knocking on your door and calling you. And like, I've heard some people say they like tallied up how much you donated that month and would call you if it wasn't enough. That's wild. And so then what was it then, since like they're pro-science and they seemed like on the liberal side of religions that you could be a part of, at least especially in comparison to like a fundamentalist background, what was it that initially made you kind of segue out of that lifestyle? Because it sounds like it was going pretty good for you.
Well, I started having doubts in high school, especially my sister-in-laws were definitely an influence, because I grew up I had 5 older brothers, now I'm down to 4. Wow. And I'm the youngest, and I'm the only girl. So growing up in that household, there's testosterone just melting off the walls, and and my brothers have always been very supportive, kind of liberal thinking. And then I met their wives were intelligent, educated people, and there was like equal rights within the relationship, and they were able to have their own voices. Even my mom, as old school as she is, she doesn't take crap from my father. So because there's no idea of like umbrella protection, like the man is the head of the household, like it is submissive. In like that 1950s kind of way, but not in a like God says that because I have a penis, I'm better than you. So, you know, you have to listen to me. So
the whole like servitude aspect of a lot of the fundamentalist religions.
Yeah. And I think that's what started to form my feminism approach to myself in the world. And I was like, you know what? I don't understand why women can't have a leadership role. I don't understand why, you know, we have these rules in the Bible about like women not being able to speak in church. But also at the same time, they would allow some women to like give like the homily in my church.
Interesting.
It was weird. Like the priest would give the gospel, then he would give like his interpretation, then he would allow like the leader of the women's Bible study to like come up and talk about the homily. It was strange for the church. I understand this is New Hampshire and it is the 90s. It is weird.
Now, for anybody who isn't familiar with the homily, how would you describe that?
A homily is the description of like the so you have your gospel. So let's say we're reading a letter from Paul to the Corinthians, and he's talking about, Jesus's sacrifice and, or, the prodigal son or whatever, he was writing to the Corinthians about how to interpret, Jesus's sacrifice and how to be a good person and blah, blah, blah. The homily is like an explanation to apply that information to the modern world.
So it's like the footnotes kind of. Almost.
Yeah. Because obviously we're not living in ancient Israel anymore.
Right.
So
Wait,
some
what?
of no, I'm sorry. I know, shocking. Where am I? Am I even here? So that's a way. It's a way to take the Bible and apply it to the modern world through the writings. Because the Catholic Church, and it's not literal, remember, it is a metaphoric story that we're trying to extrapolate what it means to be a good Catholic, what it means to be a good person out of it, and so they would let women do homilies, which was strange, but they couldn't become priests. They could be nuns, but they couldn't become priests.
And so did you at any point think you wanted to be a nun?
No. No. So one of my things, because I'm polysexual and I knew this, or bisexual, like I use both interchangeably. Because I grew up bisexual. Now poly's the actual correct term, corrected term or whatever. I don't care. But so when that started, in my teens, I started experimenting my sexuality. I had sex with people that, were men and women. And so that aspect of it didn't make any sense to me, because I was like, how is like, having sex before marriage and murder on the same page? I don't understand.
Yeah. That's a great question. That's a really good question.
I'm like, but if I have sex, I'm not hurting anybody. Like, as long as we're all having a good time, nobody gets hurt. It's a good time. Right. And then if I murder somebody, that's really, really bad. I don't understand. Yeah. Like, why are these two things equated? So
it's like, first of all, one's consensual.
Questioning things.
The other one's not.
And I think because we were, we were reading different books at the time. English class was like my major thing in high school. Like, I had a really great English teacher who I think was gay. Can't prove it, but I have my suspicions about Mr. Mulvey. So if he's watching this, hi, Mr. Mulvey. I don't know if you're ever going to see this, but I'm going to say hello. He was one of my major influences, because we would take a text, like we read Siddhartha, the story of the Buddha, in high school, and we did it from a like an analysis point of view. We weren't looking at this as like a anything to teach us anything spiritually, but like the philosophy of it. Like, how do you be a good person? Is wealth actually going to bring you happiness? Why do we suffer? And we were asking all these questions. And then that got me thinking about the church. But the thing is, though, is that leaving the church would kill at the time would have deeply upset my mom.
Yeah.
Because I love my mama. Like, it's my mama.
Yeah. So, you never want to hurt your parents. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So And that was the thing that I struggled with, because I was like, I don't know if I really believe this, but after I left high school, and I went through, I was going through a lot of emotional trauma at the time. And when I was transitioning from teenage years to adulthood, especially in my late teens, early 20s. So I put college on hold. A lot of different things were happening in my life. And I got married when I was 21 to my ex-husband. And then I had my first child, like just shy of my 24th birthday, like a couple of weeks ahead. So, so my early 20s, because I was living with my ex-husband, and there was definitely this vibe in my, especially from my parents, it's like, you're living in sin, or or good girls don't do that. So we got married, which I do not advise getting married at 21 years old.
Yeah, especially when it's just to live together, when you can just live together.
Together,
like you don't have to.
So, and then I became a parent, and then right around this time, the sex abuse scandal came out about the church. And that was my nail in the coffin moment, because I'm a sexual abuse survivor.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? No, can't put my eggs in this basket anymore. And I left. And then and this kind of started when I was a teenager. Like, I had always been interested in cult. I always been interested in like tarot cards and spooky things, alternative spirituality kind of stuff, energy, whatever you want to call it, witches, and like if you are a teenage girl in the 90s,
being a witch was like what you did.
Charmed,
that's like,
and the craft and all the goth crap. I'm still I'm an old goth, but you can take me out of goth culture, but you can take the goth out of the person. No,
you can take the girl out of Hot Topic, but you will never pry Hot Topic from her cold dead hands.
It's never gonna. I still go in there and I'm like, ooh.
I still do. Now it's like a band T-shirt store, but still, I have good memories.
Well, I can't, if you go on the website, that's all where all the cool shit is. You don't go in the store. Like, who goes into stores anymore?
That's true. No, you're right. I actually never go into stores in general, so maybe that's why I haven't been in a Hot Topic.
So, so that was one of the. So that was like my nail in the coffin moment when it came to the Catholic Church. And around this time, I was focusing on being a mom, because I had my oldest when I was just shy of 23, and then I had my son when I was 25. So I was a young mom, and that's where all my time and energy went into. Like, I still worked part-time, because I am not a Holly homemaker. I'm not. Like, that's what my
really, I am shocked.
I know, weird, huh?
That you are not a cookie cutter som.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing. I don't poo-poo on moms that want to do that. If you want to stay home, because raising kids is hard. It's really, really hard. And if you love it and you want to stay home and take care of your kids, I'm not going to poo-poo on that, because that's a choice. Like, that's something you want to do. And I, on the other hand, because of my ADHD, and I need to have conversations on a regular basis with adults, I lasted about a year, and I was like, okay, I need to work part-time at least. I need to talk to other adults.
Right.
Oh, I'm looking at Look at the Trees. I dabbled in Celtic shamanism. I did too.
There we go. Dabbled in Celtic shamanism. And then Off the Chain Atheist says, if I can click on it, there we go. I went through a spiritual but not religious phase and dipped into Wicca and other practices a wee bit as well.
Yeah. And this is not uncommon. It's okay. So in a kind of connected way, because the Catholic Church, I'm going to go into a little bit of history rather than me talking about myself for a little bit. Sure. The Catholic Church had a huge influence on why we have the weird practices that we do in the Catholic Church, because of the pagans. Okay. Because, for example, most religions do not have a goddess figure. Okay.
That's true. I mean,
Mary is a goddess figure within the Catholic Church, because a lot of the pagans had a mother goddess, especially in Celtic traditions, and Greek and Roman, and other religions that existed in the world. At past, we had a goddess figure. Mary Maria was a goddess of the sea, because it depends on how you're using that word, that name, and it has a history that you can, if you look at it, it evolves. Okay.
So Mary, as in Jesus's mom, was goddess of the sea?
Yes. Well, in the pagan tradition,
got it.
It comes from a mother
so goddess from the sea.
Mother goddess, because the mother goddess gives birth to the sun god. Okay. So the mother god gives, and that's what, creates the universe and life is the sun. And because everything had to do with the sun and ancient religions and all that type of stuff and planet, it's complicated, but if you see the through line, you understand it. Okay. And also the Catholic Church are very dramatic, and they love ritual and they love a show. Pagans love a show.
Did you say Germanic or dramatic?
Dramatic.
Oh, okay.
Like they love a show. They love a show. So if you're Catholic and you grew up in like this pomp and circumstance kind of religion where everything is ritual, there's incense burning, there's blessing of water on you, which pagans do.
I love all the the performative stuff in Catholicism. I just think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's very dramatic. And that's why it's so romantic to people, because, and if you really like that stuff, and then you start studying pagan religion as a religion and as a belief system, and you kind of get to make it up as you go along, because it's very cafeteria style. You will move. It's not hard of a jump, because though, especially in the, in the modern era, like traditional religions don't sit well with modern sensibilities. We have queer movements and the feminist movement, and letting these ideas go of like toxic masculinity and getting people to a more equilibrium kind of existence. Racism doesn't work anymore. We're all sitting there going like, yep, this is all kind of a bunch of arbitrary bull crap. We need to evolve. But the thing is, though, is that still doesn't take away magical thinking. It doesn't take away trying to believe in something outside of reality. And Wicca and paganism is an easy place for people to fall, because also if you believe in magic that you can control, then you actually have control over your destiny.
And do you think that paganism led the way for Catholicism, or do you think that Catholicism literally and intentionally took from paganism?
Oh, they did.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, they took. Yeah, because if let's just say we're living in. We're living 2,000 years, because like there's pagan religions in the Bible, like the worship of the golden calf, other
it's just interesting because
the religion of ancient Egypt.
Yeah, it's interesting that they are kind of demonized in Christianity, and yet they are the foundation of the same religions that demonize them.
Right, and also like it is polytheistic, because we have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That is a polytheistic view, all in one. And that's also a paganism sort of point of view. If you're looking at like a pantheon, they're all groups of a whole that we perceive as that are bringing reality and existence, or part of human nature, or whatever it is. And it's all one that is a whole, So, and I think that people forget that is because if you say like,
maybe they don't know at all. Yeah.
They don't know where it comes from. They don't. And the thing is, so like early Christians, before they were their predecessors had a polytheistic belief. And then a lot of those influences kind of over time change, because like religion is political. So for example, you have a tradition like Christmas, we're celebrating Yule, we have the 12 days, we have the 12 days of Saturnalia, or whatever holiday that these ancients are celebrating. Instead of force, because they try to pull everybody over, and all the Greeks and Romans and all those, the Celts and all that kind of like, no, this is mine. It's my plan. Yeah. This is my stuff. It's a lot more easier to put ideology and icons and the facings of it, and let people keep their traditions, than to force them to change. And then after a generation or two, you're just following, the Catholics' traditions and we just put different dressing on it.
Yeah. And is that kind of what happened in your life, where whenever you left Catholicism, one of the closest things you could find that still fit your comfort zone but wasn't Catholicism was paganism? Or how did that happen for you?
I don't think it was a conscious choice.
Right.
I look back on it now, and I think because one, I'm a dramatic person and I love a show. Two, I also am very mouthy and I have opinions, and yeah, I know, shocking. I know. I'm very,
you just continue
very
to
quiet.
shock me.
I know, I'm very quiet. That's
what you see is what you don't get. I'm just shocked.
I know. Yeah. So, I think and also too, like, you're in your 20s, and especially, okay. So what really happened was, so I moved away from my parents' influence. I was living in New Hampshire. Then in 2004, I moved down here. Okay.
To the Shire.
I didn't have, it was me. Yeah. In my Shire. I'm a part-time hobbit. I love it. So I moved down to Florida, and I was away from my family. So that gave me a little bit more space to try to figure out who I was, and because I've always had some kind of interest in the occult, like my mom also at the time, like, would say things like, I have dreams about stuff, and they predict the future, or my mom talked to me, and like my mom has these stuff that she's taken from this spiritual supernatural realm, which is understandable. So I find it very interesting. I found it very interesting with that also influences you, but, and so basically what you're doing, like, okay, so you're in a religion.
Right.
Okay. So, and then but the thing is though, is that I was coming into adulthood. I was a young mother. I was feeling a little bit out of control. I wasn't in the best marriage. And, during that time, I was trying to make sense out of my life. So I wanted to have more control. What a better way to have control than think that you have control over the energy of the universe.
It's like it meets the pseudo Catholic criteria. Mm-hmm. It meets the control criteria. It meets the religion criteria, but it doesn't have to be Catholicism.
Right. So, and and the thing about paganism, you can do it solitary. You don't have to belong to anything. You can do it on your own. You can do it on your own. Yeah. And that was another thing that appealed to me, because I always find it weird, because like, this was my seeds into being a free thinker. Like, these are the little things that got planted in me. Yeah. Because I realized it's like, well, I don't need anybody else to tell me what to do. Travel freely between. I do off the chain atheist. I do travel freely between Middle Earth and yes.
Yeah, I think
I want to live in Middle Earth,
between Middle Earth and our lands. But it sounds like you were always pretty much a free thinker, but you didn't recognize that about yourself almost, or you tried to like downplay it a little bit, because it just sounds like from the very beginning you've always had questions and been curious and wondered things and like explored things. And so I wonder if maybe this was just giving you permission to be that person entirely, as opposed to kind of stifling it a little bit.
I think part of it was that, and I really thank both of my parents for this, even though because my parents viewed religion as a guideline to raise people. Like, religion, morals come from religion. So what religion are we going to use morals? We're going to use the Catholic religion. But like, when I left the church, the only there's a couple members of my family that were like about it, because they didn't understand. But my parents haven't treated me any differently. Everybody in my family gets along. They know I haven't told my parents I'm an atheist activist, and I don't think they need to know that. It's fine. They just know I don't go to church. That's fine.
You're like, let me be clear. I did not tell them that I am an atheist activist. I'm not. Didn't tell them that we're out here making a career out of it. I just let them know that they don't know all the work that I'm doing, and that's okay. But even if I did, like, my parents learned that your kids are going to grow up
to be who they're going to be, and unless you learn to adapt to that, you're going to lose the relationship you have with them.
Yes.
So,
And it also sounds like they were very they promoted the idea of like critical thinking and
yes.
learning and educating yourself. So maybe they thought, you know, this is, if we let you go down this road, you're at least going to be doing research and you're at least going to be making decisions that are informed. Like they trusted you enough to know that you weren't just pulling stuff out of a hat.
Yeah, they wanted me to have a good understanding of the world, and I think that's the difference. Where when someone tells me about the Fundie religions they grew up in, like if they grew up in, like they go to homeschool, they're super Baptist, you know, they have a very weird understanding of how the world works. Like if you think the earth is only 6,000 years old, and you know, and people wrote on the backs of dinosaurs and that type of stuff, or God put dinosaurs bones in the ground to trick us, or the devil, depending on who you're talking to. I don't know. Like to me, that sounds so strange to me, because I didn't grow up with that idea. Yes, I grew up with magical thinking, but it was never. But it was always that there's a spiritual realm, that there's some other thing that we're trying to tap into. And Catholic, I understood religion as a structure. And then when I left, I started breaking that down and going, well, this is the structure, but it co-opted from, like, you know, ancient religions and, you know, the like animism and that type of stuff, you know, because there's still a part of you when you're not willing to ask yourself the really, really hard questions that try to make things fit.
Yes.
You know,
like shoehorning ideas.
Yeah. And paganism offers that, because you can insert whatever you want into it. You know?
So then why did you end up leaving paganism, and how long were you involved in paganism?
I was a pagan for 13 years, and I was a high priestess in paganism for 10 years, which is like a leadership position. Like
how do you become a high priestess? Asking for science, not for me, but I'm curious.
Okay, so
like, if hypothetically I also wanted to be a high priestess, like how,
like, you want to have your own coven?
yes.
Okay, you can lead 13 people.
Well, that's a lot of people. I'm an introvert. Can I virtually lead them?
I had at the most, me and my best friend had in our coven, I think the most was 8. So like, because you have to, like, you know, there's only so many people that you can manage.
My social battery is about this big.
Yeah, exactly.
So virtually, I got you. I will lead you wherever you want to go. In person, good luck.
And also, like, I went through my divorce with my ex-husband, and then I met my current husband, and my husband at the same time was also like this Taoist, Darwinistic pagan guy. You know, he comes from a philosophy background, so he's a little bit different in his mindset. Like that's what he got his degree in, was in philosophy. He has read a lot of Nietzsche, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, he did his thesis on Nietzsche. Like, so,
wow.
So his sum up is like, Nietzsche was a nutburger. That's what and this is sum up of Nietzsche.
A nutburger?
A nutburger. That's what he said.
What is that?
He basically thinks that like
a loony.
A loony. Yeah, he's like Nietzsche was. He's like he has some small sprinklings of good ideas, but mostly he's silly. So, and I was like,
I feel like that describes, I feel like, most of the smart people I know. They're smart, but then also you can't spend that much time with them because they're a little weird.
Like Nietzsche was a misogynist. Like you can't sit there and go, he was right about everything. It's like he has some interesting thoughts on women. So, but it was really funny is that because I met him, and he also was in his mid-30s. And I was about 20 years old when I was going through this. And I'm in my late 20s, and the prefrontal cortex of my brain is now finally closing and becoming a firm part of my personality. I'm like, okay. But my husband is very open-minded. He is a feminist. He hates any sort of bigotry. He wants people to be able to make their own decisions. And he's like, even in some of the stuff that I thought was strange that you believed in, I was still like, you have to be on your own journey.
Yeah.
He would
Those
ask
kind of
me
things have to
questions.
be, yeah, exactly.
Because he was like, because then I'm taking choice away from you.
Right.
And I don't want to take choice away from you. And that also has influenced how I am now. But, and with my ex-husband, he was very controlling. To be in a relationship with someone, like when I'm trying to find myself and in a relationship where someone is willingly be like, I support you, whatever road you want to go down, I'm here. That was super refreshing for me, you know? So, and it's very interesting because when I was going through that process of like breaking things down, looking at it in this like objective way, I was like, okay, I can start questioning things, but I didn't question reality. I questioned structures. I questioned, gender. I was questioning sexuality, but I wasn't. But I was trying to. Basically, I was trying to say there's a spiritual reason why we're the way we are.
Yeah.
And that there's some kind of realm that we're not tapping into. There's some kind of answer, and everybody's looking for it. That's why there's all these different religions in the world. People like to control people, which to a certain extent is true, except you got to remove all the spiritual bullshit you don't have any proof for. So, you're like, I was almost there.
almost there. So close.
Yeah.
And so you were kind of exploring this like spiritual but not religious side of yourself, and it sounds like at the same time kind of figuring out who you were in your first marriage, which you kind of decided like this is not, in order to really explore who you want to be and who that is, you have to like get out of this marriage, and then you meet who is your current husband.
Yes.
And so at that time, were you were not a high priestess yet, or you were at that point?
I met my best friend right around the time that I met my husband. It was really around, I think within the same year or two. I met him. I met Todd, and then I met my best friend who was already a high priest in paganism. Our order was called Order of the Night Star Rising, which if you go on the Wayback Machine, you can find the website. It's corny as hell. It's still there.
So, I'm gonna find it.
Yeah, you have to like, if you want to do it, if you want to go to the Wayback Machine, when you can look at those old style, where it's all text in different colors.
Are there certain like worldly things that you have to accomplish in order to be a high priestess, or is it more spiritual accomplishments?
So for Wicca, okay, so Wicca is the Western equivalent of what we understand as modern witchcraft, which it's a new religion claiming to be ancient because it was really created in the 40s and 50s by Gerald Gardner. And that Wicca as we know it now, it is a modern religion because Gerald Gardner decided to infiltrate some feminist witches,
so y'all like Latter-day Saints witches.
Yeah, we're basically, yes, because the thing is, though, is that like, and any good scholar will tell you this, like if we're looking at like ancient Rome, we're looking at the Celts, we're looking at the Pictish, we're looking at the Egyptians. We know that they had rituals. We know they were polytheistic. Hi, Vanessa. Hi, sweet potato. I'm so happy. So if we're looking at this, so like for example, if we're talking about Stonehenge, I'm trying to give like a concrete example of this. We know there's rituals there. We know that because it had to have some kind of crazy symbolic significance for them to, take stones that weigh, tons and tons of weight and then lift them up and set them up a certain way for the equinox to show up in between, like it might have been a combination of both. It may have been like a science observatory, but it could also have been used for spiritual practices. We don't know. We have theories, but there's no concrete proof of things. So what do pagans do? We go, oh, you know what? They worship these gods. I'm going to take, some stuff and then I'm going to apply it to, what I think these rituals are. That's what Gerald Gardner did.
So it's almost exactly like what the Catholics did.
Exactly.
Just a whole different. Interesting.
Right.
So you went from one religion that stole from the pagans to another religion that stole from the pagans.
Yes.
Interesting.
And I thought that I had hacked the system.
When really you're just a different kind of Catholic, it sounds like.
Well, and exactly too, like, because once, and then like, but the thing about the pagan religion, they encourage science and they also encourage education. Like, they want you to read. They want you to know about ancient religions. They want you to know about goddess worship. They want you to know about animism. They want you to know all these different things but the thing is, though, is that you're not reading like academic sources. You're reading like people that have taken academic sources and then they've kind of like put some like poo-poo spiritual stuff on it, and then they make it sound profound. But then if you actually go and read like, actual stuff that's done by scholars that study the evolution of religion and spiritual beliefs and how it informs culture, they don't read like that.
Whoa, wait, did you say the evolution of religion?
I know, it's shocking.
We have to be careful with that kind of language.
I'm sorry.
You're gonna have all the fundies after me, and it's just,
and I don't fight very well.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and kick him, and I'm gonna throw out.
By the way, if you want to help out Sydney, you should give a super chat.
Yeah, we're monetized now. I forgot to mention that we're monetized now, and any of the proceeds that this channel or the podcast on any platform makes through the rest of the summer, through the end of August, is going to I Am Dying Out Loud with Dave Warnock. I don't know how I messed that up. So if you're giving me money, you're actually giving Dave money. And
we have to give Dave money.
We have to give Dave money. Yeah.
Because everybody loves Dave.
Everybody loves Dave.
Everybody loves Raymond. Everybody loves Dave.
Yeah. I just went to his birthday party the other day. He's such a nice guy.
I only know David peripherally. That's the weird thing about it. Like, Gail, who is our executive director of Recovery from Religion, and her daughter Gail's daughter Glinda are very good friends with David. And I've talked to David a couple of times. He's been on the RFR, but I haven't like hung out with David. Like, I know a bunch of people that know him, and I feel like I know him, but I don't.
Yeah, I feel like that's how it goes. Like, everybody feels like they're part of his family and his direct,
like the inner circle of David.
He went to the rival high school to my high school, so I've also got beef with him, even though he went like 40 years before me. But that's another story.
But that's the thing. Like, it
never goes away.
Rules. Like, I went to West High School, and if you went to Memorial Central in New Hampshire and Manchester, New Hampshire, we are rivals. I don't care.
You would fight him at his own birthday party.
Yeah, Adam Sandler went to Central. I can't support Adam Sandler. I can't.
What a piece of shit.
He says, well, he kind of is. But
listen, I don't disagree. So I did not mean to take us on a segue there.
That was a segue. So I wanted people to just give you money. So pulling it back.
Which I always appreciate. Thank you for that. You're better at running my channel than I am.
I am a shiller. If you want me to help you make money, I will do it. I shill for Recovery from Religion. I will shill for the ACA. If you want me to shill, I'll shill. From high school,
fundamentalist girls from high school who wouldn't read Harry Potter because witchcraft now think they can heal people with essential oils. Who's in potion classes now? That's hilarious, though. Actually, that's really funny.
You know what's funny? So I have a diffuser on my desk at work because I just like smelling stuff. And sometimes like breathing peppermint relaxes me. And all the essential oils that I have are from when I was a pagan and I had them in my witch trunk. And I was like, oh, I can put them in my diffuser at work.
doTERRA for witches.
Yeah, it's so funny. And I even say this now, even as an atheist, like I still love ritual. Like I love Yule. I love Samhain. I love the Wheel of the Year. Like, if you understand the pagan religion, like I love it, because one thing I have not removed from my psychological comfort, I guess, that we are nature. I am not separate from nature. My perception is that I am, but I'm not, because we're all stardust. We're all made of the same stuff. So I don't sit there. So for me, that is a connection to a broad spectrum of existence. And it doesn't have to have like a spiritual, like woo understanding. It's just like, wow, I'm like, just because my ancestors were really good and not fucking things up, I got to be here and I got to experience this life, and ain't that great? And I'm the same stuff that's made in trees, and that's really nice. Like, I think that's a good perspective to have.
Can I just say that I love when you don't like something, you call it poo poo, and when you think it's crazy, you call it woo woo. I just think it's wonderful. I just think that's wonderful. I need you to release a line of like essential oils that are like the poo poo and woo woo, and it's just like sense you love. So you were a high priestess for 10
I
years.
Was. So okay, you asked me how I started doing that, and I went on a totally different
no, that's
path.
fine.
So
I'm just like fascinated. I'm just fascinated.
So basically so if we're going to talk about the Wiccan tradition, which is what I was originally going to talk about, there is a degree system. So my best friend, I had been part of his group and going to classes for I think like 2 or 3 years in our friendship. We were like, they're like you, me, Sydney. We were like instant friends. So, so once we started hanging out, he was, we were on this total vibe. We did a lot of weed together. So, that was bonding. So,
that's like the number one way to bond. It's just
that's
like,
when you get And when I started helping him out more. Like, we would do rituals and write them together. We would plan classes because, part of depending, like, we were more of a everybody's a student and everybody's a teacher kind of group. Some groups have a hierarchy, like you have to follow the high priest or the high priestess and move up the ranks. We're more like, okay, you want to do a class, you want to learn ancient runes, and you want to you're gonna do the ancient runes and we'll help you, but the goal is that you should be able to teach a class on it. That's always cool.
So basically this was I feel like there's like a real life example very similar to that, and I just lost it, but you were basically teaching teachers how to teach it.
We were basically like, okay, this is the subject that you're interested in. And
I like that. I like that you're like, if you're going to claim the title, you need to be able to turn around and explain it and really, that's cool. I think that's cool.
Yeah, we're so because also me and my best friend are kind of lazy, and it's like, well, if we start teaching them everything, and that's more work for us. But if we make them do the study and we just guide them, that's like a lot easier for us. Yeah, it's self-paced. It's like, okay, you want to learn this? Great, we'll help you.
Please tell me
because I had done my base work. I had done a lot of reading. I had started practicing ritual on my own.
What did you read? What is it that one reads in order to?
Oh, okay. So the first book I ever read was Witchcraft for Dummies. There's a book.
That's funny.
I don't know. I don't think I have my copy anymore, but I do have some of.
I did not expect you to say that. I expected it to be some like ancient text.
There's also Wicca for Dummies. There's a Paganism for Dummies, or the Idiot's Guide to Paganism. No, it was, and I also had the Idiot's Guide to Wicca. So that's
really funny. I thought you were going to say some like 200-year-old book, no. I pictured like you sitting around candles, not just like reading Witchcraft for Dummies, but you know what? I'm going to read it. So
yeah, I was at Barnes and Noble and I was like, okay, I'll pick up this book. And I read it and it was very, I think because of my ADHD, it was very like broken down into little bits I could understand. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds perfect for me too. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm a practical girl. Like I like things.
I am a practical witch. That's the kind of witch
that a practical witch. So, and I read stuff by Cunningham, which is books on herbs and like there's magical herbs. So, if you are not familiar with pagan religion, okay, write it down because you should look this shit up. It's entertaining as hell. So, and also like, I still have that romantic sort of pagan in me. Like, why do I want to live in Middle Earth?
I was going to say, you're in the Shire. Right. Like, come on.
It hasn't left me. Because there is a power in nature that we understand. Like hurricanes exist, earthquakes exist. Like nature don't give a fuck about you. Nature. When we die, every fucking greenery is just going to take over the urban landscape and be like, you silly humans, you're so silly.
Yeah, the trees are just going to tear everything up.
Yeah. So the way that I look at that's, and for me at the time, there was a spiritual connection to that. It was like there has to be like a consciousness and force to nature. It's the Gaia, the Gaia consciousness, that the earth has a consciousness and makes decisions.
Someone mentioned Gaia in the chat earlier. That's funny that you say that. I'm trying to find it, but interesting. That's very interesting. It's interesting to me how a lot of belief systems and religions and thought processes like really overlap, and it's almost like we're all just trying to,
make sense out of the world.
Yes.
Yeah. And so my best friend was like, okay, well, you're starting to get it. And he was like, hey, do you want to help me run Order of the Night Side Rising? I remember we were at something like burger joint. Waiting was based on this place. That's with Ryan Reynolds. I can't remember the name of the restaurant though, but he based a whole movie on this particular.
Interesting.
Yeah, that he used to work at when he wasn't a millionaire and not completely gorgeous. But okay, so. But he based the whole movie on this particular restaurant chain that was down the road from I can't remember it right now. I'll come back to me later. Anyway, we were sitting there, and this is a very strong memory that he's like, hey, I want you to help me run Order of the Night Side Rising. And I was like, okay. And he's like, you have to do your degree system. And I was like, okay. So first degree, which I had already done, is a lot of reading. It's a lot of reading and figuring out what type of witch you are, basically.
Okay.
Because there's different ways to be a witch. So there's different ways you can be a kitchen witch, you can be a nature witch, you can be a cyber witch, you can, whatever, how you control energy is like your, the thing that you like, this feels right to me.
That's cool.
And then when you move into second degree, that means that you have, so first degree is a very inward experience, like you're discovering who that is. And then your second degree is that you're now want to express that outwardly.
Got it. So level 1, like figuring out who you are and why you are. And then level 2 is more like showing and sharing that.
Right. And then level 3, we call like you have reached the, Crone stage, where you have achieved wisdom, and because because that's the thing about, like, you get knowledge, then you get experience, and then you get wisdom.
I also want to know what a cyber witch is.
A cyber witch is able to. I can't believe when
it's me every time I go on a live stream.
So right now, technically, if we were going to add like a power to what you're doing, you're being a cyber witch, because you are using your voice and influence to get people to change their minds and their perspectives. That's technically a cyber witch.
Got it.
But if you were just preaching like paganism through it, or like witchcraft through it, that's what you would be doing. And they're on TikTok and on the YouTubes. They're out there.
Yeah.
So if we're not coming from a secular view, or we're coming from like, I have magic powers, my voice and stuff has influence, which it does, but not in like, because we're social creatures.
Yeah. And what kind of, like, what category of witch did you consider yourself?
I was a natural witch.
Got it.
I was very much about, I was a, I love ritual. Like, I love me ritual.
And also I think that part of that is also our ADHD. How we just routine, ritual.
Yeah, you said that earlier. Okay, I'm like, there's steps involved.
Yes.
There's a plan.
Yes.
And I'm actively doing something. But some people are more of like a meditative witch. Some people we would call like witch on the fly, which means that like, okay, like, all right, I lost my book and I need to find my book, and I'm going to do a spell real fast so I can find my book. And you would do like a real quick spell, and you would use things around you, to kind of make that happen. Where I'm a plant, it's very weird. I'm a planner and not a planner. It's very strange. I think it's the ADHD brain. Like, we like to plan, but we like to play on spontaneous moments.
And so when you talk about spells, are those more like meditative, or were there spells that were actually said to like work in the exact way that they're supposed to? Like, do you believe that spells work more than prayer? How does that work?
So we did recognize that spells were a form of prayer, you know. But the difference is, instead of asking God to help you get a promotion at work, you still had to take, for pagans, you have to take personal responsibility.
Yes. Yeah.
So so my favorite example is like, okay, you want to get a job, okay, like you're okay, and you can do a spell to list out specifically where you're looking for in that job and bring that energy to you of getting the right job.
Like a mantra, almost.
Like a mantra, yeah.
Like a manifestation.
But this is just a form of psychologically tricking yourself. You're priming your subconscious brain.
Yeah.
So your conscious brain starts paying attention to opportunities, things that, because we only absorb so much information, but it gives you a point of hyper focus.
Yeah.
And so versus like you're asking for an external help. But the thing is, though, is that you also have to send out resumes. You have to go on job interviews.
You're like, you can do a spell all you want, but you also gotta send your resume.
So what is that any difference if you're like, doing like mindfulness meditation? You know what I'm saying? Like,
but I mean,
saying like, okay, this is the type of, like, I want to get this, like, there's a certain career path I want to go down. This is the type of work I want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to meditate on that so I can be aware of those opportunities. But
right. And I can absolutely see how saying something to yourself, even if it's like something somebody told you to say, like a spell or something, I can absolutely see how that could encourage you and keep you going, just like a mantra, just like how people have their words of affirmation. I can 100% see how telling yourself, like, I'm going to get that job, I'm going to get that job, I'm going to apply and I'm going to get it, will help you apply and get it and take that energy into the interview, as opposed to just being like, I'm going to put this off on somebody else. In a lot of cases, they put it off on God to do it for me. It's like, like, take responsibility.
The point also in paganism is that karma is real. So what you put out, you get back, especially threefold. So so especially in Wicca is that what you put out will come back to you 3 times. So if you put out negative energy, you'll get that 3 times back. If you put out positive energy, it comes 3 times back. Because if the concept is that if you are the controller of like universal energy and that type of stuff, that because you have to use it responsibly. And if you don't use it responsibly, if you use it to curse somebody, if you do it to make sure somebody has a bad day, that type of stuff, you're doing it with malice, then that malice will come back to you because you're not in that, like, do no harm. Because there's ethics also in witchcraft. Like, you can't wish for harm on another human being,
Yes.
But there's also like, so yeah, that sounds good on its surface, but like, just imagine, okay, like, you think energy transference is real, like in a spiritual sense, not in like how we understand energy is.
Right.
Okay.
Not like in a scientific
sense. And like,
sense.
I see Neil, you're in the audience, so I'm going to pick on you. So Neil makes me mad. Okay. And I'm just annoyed. I'm just annoyed with Neil. And I just think like, God damn it, he pissed me off. And then he gets into a car accident. I can think that because I had negative thoughts towards him, and because I'm a witch, that somehow the energy shifted and caused, like, well, you're, if you really believe that, or I was like doing if I did spell work to curse him, I can start, correlation is not causation. I will put a correlation to it. Like, well, Neil pissed me off and he got into a car accident. Neil. Yeah. Watch your back. Coming for you, man. But like, that's the type of stuff, and it's psychologically harming. It's the same thing as prayer. People think that their thoughts and influences can influence God, and God, will make things happen. It's the same thing, but just different dressing.
Well, and I can see how like the kind of person who would want to put like a negative spell on somebody is probably not a very positive person all the time. Like I don't
Right.
imagine somebody who's just absolute roses suddenly turns, you know. So I can imagine how that action is just like a small example of the negativity they manifest all the time, if that
Right.
makes sense. Yeah.
And this is the thing too within paganism, there's no angels and demons. Everything comes under choice and energy flow. So if I'm putting out positive energy into the world, which I try to do anyway, because I don't like to be a butthead. I just like to be kind. Because it's just less energy. And like I'm like, it takes too much work to be a butthead. And I'm
really
lazy.
does though.
It does. It
really
takes a lot of work.
Like people are like, how, like, you're a good person. I'm like, no, I'm late. I'm lazy. I'm lazy. I am a petty bitch. I'm a petty bitch, but everybody's lucky that I'm lazy. Like,
yeah, that's it. I'm like, you don't think I'm having bad thoughts about you, but I am.
although I will say, and this is for everybody. This is for everybody in the chat. Just to detour for like 2 seconds. I discovered judyrecords.com last night. Have you ever heard of it? Judy
What
Records?
Have you ever? No.
judyrecords.com is a place where you can type in anyone's name and you can find any legal activity they've ever been involved in, if it's public record. Anything. It works. So I was on it until like 1 o'clock in the morning. So if you want to be the kind of witch that manifests positive energy, but also enjoys being a petty witch, just search people's names that you don't like.
The thing
on
is,
Judy
though,
Records.
is like to pretend we're not all petty bitches is a lie. We're all petty bitches. You're all petty bitches. Like for the most part, we go out and we are like, hey, I'm going to be a secular humanist. And I'm going to promote equality and kindness and goodness in the world. But then late at night on the fucking Google, you're searching up your ex and finding out if he's banging somebody new or if she's banging somebody new, because that's all we all do it.
Or if you got a ticket for not buckling up in 1988. Not that I found that last night.
Yeah, but I like that because it's gratifying to us because you're like, ha, I knew you were a butthead.
Yes. And so with that being said, what would make someone, maybe you weren't disillusioned, but what would make somebody disillusioned with that lifestyle or leave, even if you still
for me,
respect
I went to college and I took psychology courses.
So wait, so you went to college, so you took like a 10-year gap between high school and college?
I was originally going to go for nursing, and then
Got it.
So I started in 2008. So I think I was 28, 29 years old. I went back to 30. I went back to school. But it took a while to get my undergrad because I was going part-time. I was still raising kids, Yeah. And then when I was going to transition to do my BA program, I got sick. And then I was out of school for about 2 years because I was dealing with a neuropathy problem.
Oh,
yeah.
rough.
I was paralyzed for a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I was paralyzed. Okay. To be fair, I was on a wheelchair I was paralyzed for a month. And then I was in the hospital where I had to get those things connected again and do all the stuff. And then I was on a wheelchair for 3 months doing PT. I was on a cane for another 6 months. And then, I was on a walker for 6 months. And then I was on a cane for about 6 months. And then it took me another 6 to get to full functional again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and that was back in 2012.
Yeah. And then you still went back to school and
Yep. I was in recovery when I went back to school.
That's wild.
Yeah. And I just got this bug, man. Anyway, so once, because I was originally going to go for nursing, and then when my transverse myelitis hit, I was like, well, that's a lot of physical demand. Like, I have a hard time even exercising because it will make my nerves flare up. And
so it's like a permanent thing.
It's a permanent thing. Like my nerve it damages the myelin sheaths that cover your nerves. So it will signal wrong. Wow. So like my left leg constantly feels like it's pins and needles.
Oh, I hate that. Oof.
Yeah.
I hate
it all the time. I'm just used to it now.
Yeah.
I've been living it for 11 years. So, but like, that's another story. Yeah. So I went back to, so I was like, well, I've always been interested in psychology. So I'm like, let me start that's why I got my degree in. So I'm going to shift my focus. And once that happened, everything that I thought I knew kind of got blown open, because
How so?
Once you learn how we trick ourselves, the emotional manipulation that we do to ourselves, that the mind is terrible at memory, and that the mind is terrible at that, because we are creatures of pattern and trying to make sense of the world, that is basically chaos. We will form meanings to things that have no meaning.
Yes.
Because it's all arbitrary, really. So
we really need stuff to mean stuff.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's such a human trait, is everything has to mean something.
Right. And then I learned how emotions play more of a role in how we are than we think they do. Because the mental and emotional realm of your brain they constantly overlap. That's why we have cognitive bias. That is why we have social conditioning. That is why we are a mixture of nature and nurture, because those things kind of form our identity and who we are. And then when I realized, and also too, that if something is reinforced over and over again, those neurochemicals constantly know that pattern. And they're like, that's why I say you stay in hell because you know the streets, is because this is a pattern I know.
Yeah.
And even though it sucks, this is the one I know. And the fear of the unknown, because we are pattern seeking creatures, because that makes us feel safe, even if it makes us scared. It's on some level we're like, this I know. If I go against this, I have to form a new idea, new identity, new way of thinking.
Right. And there's the idea that I feel like we often as humans fall victim to sunk cost fallacy.
Right.
So it's already a human trait to say, well, I've already spent, 10 years doing this. I might as well just keep going, as opposed to I'd rather not spend 11.
Yeah, because I end up taking both psychology and philosophy at the same time. So I think that influenced a lot of my way of thinking. And then I even remember this conversation I had with one of my professors, because we were talking about brain science and we were talking about relationships. And I said, well, how do I know my husband is not my soulmate? Like, I've just felt it. Like, we met each other, we instantly fell in love. He's like, because there's a deep part of your brain that recognized that person was safe. And then you just extrapolated meaning onto it.
Interesting.
And I was like, and that blew my mind. Like, that was one of the moments that I was like, oh, he's fucking right.
Yeah. You're like, how dare you? But also,
I was mad at the moment, but now that was one of those moments that I was like, oh, fuck, that is true. Like, I just put meaning onto something that just felt good at the time.
And so when you discovered that, like, how does one exit a coven? Like, how does one leave?
It just kind of fell apart. I think, like, so what happened was I taught for 10 years. Me and my best friend led it. We had a good group of friends, and it went through iterations over those 10 years.
Right.
And then around 2018, 2019, I got my job at the Spirit University. If you want to know about my background, if you go look up the Skeptical Inquirer and look up myself, Helen Green, doing an interview about about working there, you can look it up there. But I worked there for 2 years before the pandemic hit, and it once you start going through that skepticism stage and you start looking at people that claim that they can talk to spirits, and I was already, like, I had been out of school for a little bit since then. I've been out of school for like 4 or 5 years at that point. It took me a little while to get my degree because of getting sick and things happen.
Yeah, being a mom and life happening.
Being a mom, life is busy. So once I did the thing, I was like, oh. So there's a part of me that wanted to believe that something was real.
Right.
Like, and I think that this was my, like, nope, everything is bullshit. Nobody has any real answers except for what can actually test and understand.
Right. Like you thought if I leave Catholicism for
Yeah,
something else like paganism or witchcraft,
right.
that is the answer. When in reality, you were literally just looking for an answer. And
Yeah.
these people just happened to have answers that you felt were good enough
Yeah, and it was.
without actually
I
being
don't
real.
know. I think that I think that's the like. I don't know if it's a problem. I want to say that when you're curious and you really want to understand something, you dive in. Like
Yes.
I wasn't like because I was like, okay, let me go work at. I'm like, well, I need a job. Let me go work at this place. And I worked there for 2 years, and I saw so many shysters because once you recognize emotional manipulation, once you recognize when people are dealing with trauma, once you recognize people want to be comforted, they want to make because they were doing the same thing I was doing. I was trying to make sense of a world that made no sense.
Right.
And that's what people are doing. But you add on top of it the emotional manipulation. You add on top of it people not wanting to deal with the reality of death, not wanting to deal with these things that befall people. Like I've experienced very close people to me dying, and it sucks. I do.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
terrible. We've all experienced it, and it's terrible.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. And so were you upset at all when you kind of came to reality or when you kind of
I
discovered what you realized was the truth, or was it more like a fascination?
Um, I've never been in like when I went through my deconversion process, I was never angry.
Good.
I
That's
was
good.
never mad. I was just like, oh, I'm like, we have false beliefs. We are because this is what the brain does. And also too, because I wasn't grown up, I wasn't grown up. I wasn't brought up in a family that didn't encourage those things. I had the freedom to explore and that I had the freedom to ask questions. That made the difference. And I understand why people go through that angry phase. I understand why they
Yeah.
feel the need to deconvert people. They want to push people to their side
Right.
because they feel like the veil's been over them.
Right.
When I realized that no, the veil was never there. I just took like there's part of my brain that had, and it's not my parents' fault. Like my
No.
mom, like you would love my mom. I'm telling you all, you would love my mom. She was just following the tradition that she's always followed that
Yeah.
gave her comfort. And that's not something I would take away from her. And when I look back on it, I'm just like, oh, that's just the way that thing. I went through any.
Yeah. And then off the
Yeah.
chain atheist says, I went through an angry atheist phase until I realized I was mostly angry at myself for being fooled for so long.
But also you weren't, but the thing is though, is that you weren't you weren't willingly, allowing is that if you're taught this at a young age, what 5-year-old is be able to have some kind of idea of subjective reality? Like,
Right.
really? And
Like we're
because
still
we
believing the tooth fairy at that point.
yeah, like, well, my funny story about the tooth fairy, my 2 kids, they stopped believing in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, but the tooth fairy they held on to because they got cash.
But I was gonna say she's the only one that brings cash.
Yeah, that's right. I was like, oh, well, that's clever.
That's
You
funny.
cheated the system, smart children. So, but that's the type of thing is that I realized that yes, I was given some tools in my toolbox, but I didn't have the tools to understand why we we think the way we think, why we are such pattern seekers, why we need to make sense out of the world, how this forms social bonds, how it forms culture, how it forms religion. These things are all interrelated. And if you don't have an understanding of how that works, the simple explanations are going to be comforting and easy, and so I gave myself the permission to be like, explore, ask yourself the tough questions, because I was like, hell was never a fear. Like hell wasn't preached at my church when I was growing up. I don't know how I haven't been in a Catholic church in like 15 years, so I have no idea what they're preaching now. But at the time, fire and brimstone, you're going to burn. That wasn't the biggest thing about hell. If you were going to commit suicide, that was a no, because you would burn. Or it wasn't, and even on queer issues, they were kind of like iffy on. It wasn't like, it isn't the hot button topic as it is now. So I think it's a little bit different. So it's a lot for people to kind of absorb and work that way through. And when I started realizing that, I was like, oh, it wasn't my parents' fault. It's somebody's fault, because it's the fault of the institutions if they're aware they're preaching bullshit.
Right. And
that's your responsibility. It's not the responsibility, like, indoctrination is not your fault, but it's your responsibility. So you're like, if you don't understand why you believe what you believe and where that comes from, you need to explore it, because you want to have good reasons to believe it.
Right. Yeah. And the wildest part is, a lot of these leaders truly do think they're doing the right thing. That, like, I talk to people about that all the time. It's easy to look and be like, oh, what horrible people leading me astray on purpose. A lot of them don't think it's on purpose. They're still doing horrible things that they shouldn't do. Don't get me wrong. But like, a lot of people truly believe that that is what the expectation is, especially in like evangelical and fundamentalist settings. They truly think they're doing the right thing by doing such wrong things to people.
Well, I mean, because Bill Gothard just, all over the place right now. Because like, if you have not watched Shining Happy Gothard, fuck that guy. But he probably thinks that he is doing the right thing. Like, he thought, even though he got kicked out because he's a butthead and terrible person.
Well, yeah, and he also told everybody to have like 21 kids, and then he never got married.
Yeah, but he never was married. He was never married. And I'm like, you're giving marriage advice and you've never been married, dude? Like, what the hell? But in his brain, he thinks he's doing the right thing, even though he has a very misogynistic, sexist, also homophobic view of everything, that you're just like, but in his brain, he thinks he's doing God's work. And then all the blessings that he ever experienced, it was because of God. And I think people, once you wake up and you realize that we trick ourselves, we try to protect our egos and protect that part of ourselves that are wrong, because unless you learn to embrace being wrong, it's going to be super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's going to be super, super uncomfortable. And you have, or learning to deal with the discomfort. Like, I was in a conversation last week with an autistic friend, and we were having a discussion of something that I was taught 20 years ago, when my son, who's has had a part of something, was on the autism spectrum, and they were giving me their perspective on it. And because I had been living 20 years with this idea in my head, I got a little bit offended. And then I sat with myself for a little bit and go, you're just having an emotional connection to this, because you're having conversation about your son. And, and that this person isn't attacking you, but they're giving, as someone that lives with autism, they're giving you the reality of how they live and their perspective. And that doesn't make it wrong. You just have to adjust your thinking. Right. You can sit in the wrongness and recognize you're wrong and deal with those emotions without feeling like you are attacked or your perception is wrong. You can go, you know what, let me sit with that. That kind of makes sense. And I think that takes a lot more patience with yourself. That takes a lot of patience to go, you know what, this is making me feel kind of icky. But
yeah. And you're right, though. It is so easy to immediately turn to kind of defensiveness, to turn to like upset, maybe not pure anger, although it is very easy to also get angered about that sort of thing. And I think it takes a lot of self-control, a lot of introspection, and a lot of, we were talking about reliability, like personal reliability on yourself. To just kind of sit back and hear things like that and try to react to them in a different way, and like almost accept them and be like, okay, this is how things are. Now what do we do? Right. I feel like a lot of organized religions actually feed off of that instinctual need to get angry and upset and defensive. And so they take that and they say like, you should be upset. You should be angry. You should keep, doubling down on what we tell you and doubling down on your beliefs, instead of questioning why it is that you're so upset. Maybe you're upset because you don't quite understand as much as you thought you did, and you feel like you're being called out a little bit.
Right, and it takes a emotional maturity to do that. It like I didn't come into being this way. It took me a lot of practice, and I still struggle with it. And to pretend that I don't struggle with it would be a fucking lie. It would be, because we're human beings, and we don't like to feel uncomfortable. We avoid pain, you know. And I get that. I do. I get 120%. I do, but we're going to be emotionally and intellectually honest with ourselves. You sit there and you go, oh, you know what? I recognize my own hubris. I recognize that I have a problem. Like if you ever watched Ted Lasso, that is a perfect example of how to be a good person in a realistic way.
Yes,
It is.
yes.
It is. It's just.
And like, so is that kind of what made you segue into humanism? Is like this idea that now you're just focusing on being a good person?
I think it was just a natural, because I've always been like, I think because I was bullied as a kid, one, and I had experienced real abuse. I didn't want other people, like that empathy center of my brain. I didn't want other people to feel that way.
Right.
I have a real problem when people get insulting, when people attack people for things that they cannot change about themselves. I get very upset at, because I'm like, I don't tolerate abuse. I don't verbal, physical, mental, any abuse, spiritual abuse. Nope. And I think that's because I know it's like to feel that way. I know it's like to feel othered. I know it's like to feel I am less than a human being. And that has informed who I am now, because I sit there, I'm like, listen, you can disagree with someone, but if you start attacking things that they can't control, you're not actually addressing the argument. You just want to dismiss it. Like I was in a debate last night where I was speaking, and there was a man who was a sexist on the server, and he said I was emotionally manipulating people because I was a woman. And and I'm sitting there going,
tell us you've never had sex without telling us you've never had sex.
Right. And I'm like, oh no. And I did say Ted Lasso. I did. But it's one of those terrible, like that's because like then I'm like, well, you're not actually addressing my argument. You just don't like the fact that I'm speaking because I happen to be a woman.
Right. The fact that I'm speaking bothers you. Nothing else. Let's not make this something else.
Right. And I'm like, I'm like, and now you're going to attack something about myself that I cannot change.
Right. So now you're an activist with Recovering from Religion, which for anybody who is unfamiliar is, and correct me if I quote this incorrectly, but basically you encourage people to get non-religious help for things like alcoholism, or you put them with therapists and things.
No. Okay. So what Recovering from Religion does is offer help, healing, and support with people that are dealing with doubt and non-belief. That is our mission statement. Got it. So basically that means if you are struggling with anything from like a fear of hell, to starting to question the doctrine of your religion, to dealing with issues of like being a queer person or a woman in a religion that doesn't seem to match up with your identity and how you perceive the world. If you are a religious person and you are coming up against with some stuff that isn't quite squaring for you, or you're thinking about switching religions, wherever you are on the spectrum, even if you're started questioning 5 minutes ago, or you've been out for 20 years and you're still dealing with some bullshit that you were taught, it's a safe place for people to land. So I'm going to do my promo now. So if you are dealing with doubt and non-belief, what you want to do, if you are on the west side of the world, as in the Western countries, you want to call 1-844-I-DOUBT-IT, or go to our website, www.recoveringfromreligion.org. And a live trained agent will be there, and you can ask them anything dealing with doubt and non-belief. And they're there to offer empathetic ear and give you resources and support to whatever you're dealing with. if you need additional mental health services, like you're dealing with religious trauma syndrome, you have depression, anxiety, we can connect you with a secular therapy project.
There it is.
Where we have evidence-based trained therapists that use scientific, vetted therapies to help you deal with the thing that you're dealing with. Yes. And then there's also secular recovery, which we have resources for that. If you're dealing with any sort of addiction, you can get secular groups and resources for that. So we're like recovered for religion is like the tier. And then like, if you say like, hey, I'm an alcoholic and I don't want to go to AA, because I've been to Al-Anon and it sucks.
It's literally like church. It's literally just.
I hated it because before my brother passed away, he was a heavy alcoholic, and he was living with us at the time. This is another story, but like I'm going to go just in a little bit of it. And I didn't know how to deal with it because I've never been an addict. I don't know what that's like, and having a family member that's an addict is very, very hard to deal with. So I went to an Al-Anon meeting as someone that was I was in my agnostic phase at this point. Like I was like, and plus I had gone to school for, understanding psychology. And I had actually, like, I wasn't a addiction counselor, but I understood how addiction worked. So I'm going to this, and they're saying like, you need to give it to God. You need to let this go. And I'm sitting there going like, no, this is a bunch of fucking bullshit. And this is now making me uncomfortable because then you're making me pray. And I'm like, but I don't believe. Yeah, so, and also it was also upsetting for, even if I was like, let's say if I was Jewish or Muslim or like didn't follow a Christian religion, and I'm going to this group to get support of something that's happening in my family or with a friend, and you're forced to, give something over to God or a Christian prayer, and you're not there. I'm like, that's so insulting to me. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. And there's people out there that are like, well, maybe that's why you're struggling so much is because you're not a Christian. Maybe you should think about that.
Yeah. Or like if you didn't save your brother from his alcoholism with your gut, unless he found Jesus. And I've seen people get addicted to Jesus and it's just as bad.
Right. Exactly. Because it's insidious. It's just a whole, and so now through your activism, you're on every channel. Like I feel like every time I'm on YouTube, you're on somebody's channel, you're live streaming, including mine. You've been on my mega streams. Now you're on this one.
So much fun. I would like when SR invited me, I was like, sure, I'll chit chat. And then I got to meet really awesome people that now are part of the community. And like, that's my gig. Like, it's been so great. And like I said, we became instant friends.
Yeah. And do you feel like that activism and that community and that like difference and the purpose behind the things that you do you feel like that fills the void that you used to think you needed some kind of belief system or God or something to fill, or is it just a whole separate thing for you?
It's not really filling a void because I've always been a very social person. I've always been a person that I wanted to help. I've always been a person that because like my parents taught me to be altruistic. They taught me that, while you're here, you have to be kind and good and help people out. Like my mom made me, I started in Girl Scouts and I became a candy striper. And then when I was in high school, I volunteered for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Even in adulthood, I would go to different, like I would go to soup kitchens and help organize food. Like this has always been something, part of my personality, even when I was religious. You seem like
you're always giving and helping and donating and volunteering.
Yeah. And I think that's just part of my personality because again, I think that just comes down from being, for lack of a better word, traumatized when I was younger. And dealing with bullies and dealing with abuse, and that I now want people to know that there are good people in the world that want to help whatever way that I can. Like, and like, and also I'm a selfish altruist. Like it makes me feel good when I help other people. Like I like feeling good. So,
I mean,
and the more
good, we might as well help
each other. Like as more we're kind to each other, it comes back to us. I don't want to live in a shitty world. Do you want to live in a shitty world? No.
And so if you had to give any piece of advice for somebody who maybe they're considering deconstructing and they're not sure what to do, or maybe they've decided to, but they aren't quite sure where to go from here, what would you say to them?
The first two things I would is to be patient with yourself and also to be compassionate with yourself.
Yes.
And also be compassionate with the people that you're seeming to be your enemy. Those are, it sounds simple, but it's not.
It almost sounds religious.
I know it sounds
everybody.
religious, but keep in mind that we have to remember even the people that hurt us are still human beings.
And they're hurting probably.
And because so for example, if you are going through the deconversion process and your mom is like super religious and brought you up to be, to believe in God, to save you from hell, if you tell your mother, I'm leaving religion, in her brain, she's one, failed as a mother. Yes. Two, she's now terrified for your immortal soul. Okay. So, and then also three, you are now representing the thing that she's always been fighting against in her own child.
Yes.
And that is traumatizing, not only for you when you're going through this process, but also traumatizing for the people around you.
Yes.
That have been a part of this religion, are ready to go on that journey with you. Yes. But I think it was I don't know who said this, but like it's kind of like coming out when you're gay. You get a year. Okay. Everybody like gets a year to ask whatever questions they want to ask you, to try to understand where you're coming from, but give them time to settle into the idea. After a year, if they still haven't accepted you for, going through that process, they probably won't. And you have to decide what kind of relationship you want to have with that person. Mm-hmm. And I also remind people that you can control how you want the conversation to go. And also too, I do not advise, if you are going through the deconversion, don't try to convert your mom. It's not going to go, because you cannot untangle that web. Yes. It is like my kids. I love my children and they're adults. I have a 19-year-old and a 22-year-old, and they have their own lives. They have their own opinions now. They're coming into adulthood and finding themselves. They're going to have opinions and things that aren't that are their makeup that I may not 100% agree with, and I cannot separate them of them being my babies. They are not my friends. They are my children, and you have to recognize that emotional closeness.
Yes, yes, yeah, and I think also deconstruction, just like any other major change, just like quitting smoking or losing weight or going to the gym, it has to be your decision. The more people tell you you need to make that decision, the harder it's going to be to make that decision. The more you're going to put your foot down and try to hinder that process because you feel like you're being bullied or pushed. And so I feel like the best way to get people to see your point of view is to be somebody they really like and they really want to spend time with and they really want to learn more about, and then have them find out that side of you, your beliefs or lack thereof.
Nick Soder, our friend Nick Soder, was on the RFRX podcast last night, and he asked, if you could, would you Thanos snap religion away? If you could, would you Thanos snap religion away?
Probably. I know that there's a lot of cultures and identities that are very heavily founded upon religion, and not all religions are harmful. So I would hate to get rid of the more peaceful, positive ones, but maybe I would. Maybe.
See, I said no.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I
because
wouldn't.
I don't know the consequence.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was struggling with.
It might actually traumatize and really, really hurt people.
And and also,
it's like, because I am now taking control away from somebody else.
Well,
I've
in
taken
this scenario,
away abilities. Yeah, but I'm just talking about like how I know human beings. Like I am now taking control away.
Well, and I just thought though, in this
Yeah.
scenario, if they would remember religion and remember all that stuff, then I wouldn't do it. If they
Right.
would wake up having never experienced any of that, then I would do it probably.
Like I think a better question is like, would you get rid of the harmful aspects of religion? I think that's a fairer question, because then I would say yes, because
like I wouldn't get rid of Buddhism. I wouldn't get rid of Taoism.
No, I wouldn't get rid of paganism. I wouldn't get I wouldn't get rid of the Catholic religion. I would just get rid of all the horrible things that have happened, like, because I think that's the problem. I bet too, but I think because you don't know, because like for instance, Hinduism is core to that society. It is the oldest religion in the world.
Yes. I think there would be more as much harm as it causes. I think getting rid of it instantaneously like that would be just as harmful.
Yeah. So and I get people's temptation because of religious trauma to say yes. I understand that instinct, because we, as empathetic human beings, we want to have as least harm as possible. And even as a secular humanist and an atheist, and I want people to come to reason, I want people to just be good for goodness sake, basically, that no one's keeping score, and that you have to actively choose to be a good person. You have to actively choose to want to help other people. You have to actively choose to be like, nobody's keeping score. The only person that's keeping score is me. And you have to want to look at yourself in the mirror every day and fall asleep at night, Yes. You have to want to do that. You have to want that. And there are people, I'm sorry, that are good people because God's keeping score.
Yes, there are. There are. I always say that I'm much more likely to trust a really nice atheist, because at least I know they're not doing it for points. At least I know they're not doing it for any other reason. And so, I think that's a wonderful point. I think not being angry at the people that led us down that path of whatever the religion is that this hypothetical person is deconstructing from, and that compassion and that empathy, which, man, when human beings are confused, it's really hard to have compassion and empathy. But I think that's a great place to start in terms of tolerating people that you find difficult to tolerate, and giving them that year to kind of figure out what they want to ask or how they feel. And also, I feel like that first year is important, because they don't know how militant you're going to be either. So they think, oh, you're an atheist now, you're going to be shoving it down my throat every other day, you're going to be making snide comments. And they need that year to realize, like, oh, no, you're not. You never really bring it up or mention it or talk about it unless we ask.
No, unless you want it. But obviously if I'm like on TikTok and engaging with a theist, I'm willing to say I want to have this conversation with you, because I don't know you. This is just a voice on the phone. I don't know who you are.
Just the
conversation. But if I was to have that debate with one of my brothers, it would be too emotionally taxing for me, because it is someone I love and care about, and we're coming from two completely different ideas of how the world works. And my brother is super Catholic, and I have a lot of ethical problems with that. So many problems, but my brother's a good person. So I'm sitting there going like, this is because people are complicated. And I will call that shit out. I'm like, if you are supporting an organization that has done basically criminal acts over and over and over again, I'm a little concerned. But also I recognize that my brother is a good person, and he's been able to compartmentalize. And I did the same thing. We all compartmentalize, and we're okay with some things and not okay with other things, because the world is complicated, and ethics and morals are not black and white.
100%, 100%. And I think that's so important to recognize. And I think it takes time to kind of get used to those ideas, and to really start to what's the term I'm looking for? To basically, I don't want to say exude. That's not the word I'm looking for, but you understand me, to like project that energy, I suppose. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not something that anybody expects you to be able to do right out of the gate, but it is something that you can start to practice.
It's a practice. Fake it till you make it. It can be, kind of thing, because it is, because, and I think that for those of us, I will say that religious belief and spiritual belief influenced my humanism, my secular humanism, but it is not the completion of that. Like I didn't like, because I had people around me growing up that modeled good behavior. It was done through the filter of religion, or even like karma or whatever my belief system was at the time. That's the filter I've understood, but it's not the reality of it, because once you understand how people be people, you're like, oh no, we just don't like pain, and it's just a lot easier to be good to each other.
Yeah. Absolutely,
because we're lazy.
Yes, I'm a lazy bitch. Yes. Well, Helen, if people are watching this and they're being introduced to you for the first time, where can they find more of your content? Where can they see you? I've linked some things in the description box below, but I would love to hear more about where we can find you, see you, hear you, watch you.
So I am a host on the nonprofits. So if you subscribe to the nonprofits channel, I am there. I'm actually going to start conducting on August 16th. So I'm going to record my first episode where I get to like be in control. And then we've been releasing, instead of having it be like one podcast on Sundays, we've been releasing 20-minute videos throughout the week, because I understand that people have short attention spans, and you watch a video for 20 minutes, you get the news, you get the commentary, and we move on, because we live in the modern era, and I also have ADHD. And I understand. 2, I am an ambassador from Recovering from Religion. I host I'm one of the co-hosts of our virtual support group that happens at the beginning of the month, the first Sunday of the month at 7:00 my time, which is Eastern. I host with other 2 people. So if you need help with religious deconversion, you're dealing with doubt and non-belief, please go to recoveringfromreligion.org, and you'll get access to our support groups, because there's a whole thing for that. Also, we're on Meetup and Eventbrite. So,
and you also have a Tuesday live stream show on TikTok now,
so
right?
I started doing the TikTok. I now consider myself a part of the youths. Hello, fellow kids.
Some of those young youths with the live streams.
I'm channeling my inner Steve Buscemi. Hello, fellow kids.
Hello, fellow kids. Yeah. I just started live streaming.
I'm sorry. As an old person, I love that meme.
Yes, it's one of my favorites. Yeah, I just started live streaming this year, so I can't even imagine. Like TikTok is like well beyond my realm.
So I started calling my little show I do on Tuesday nights at 7:00 p.m. till 8:30, though I've been running later, and I'm probably going to do another one if I can.
And what's your handle?
You can still find it's at the ACA. My personal TikTok is under a drama and a gal, or you can look up Hell's Bells. It will come up both. You'll find me. I need to start posting on there, but I'm lazy. Like I feel like I should do like little blurbs of opinions that I have, and I just haven't yet, but I think I should. But if you go to the ACA TikTok, Richard Gulliver also has a live stream, and also Dr. Richard Firth also does a live on the TikTok. Do I remember the times right now? No. If you're part of the ACA and remember the times, please tell me and I will promote them. Anyway, but mine is Tuesday night. And basically, I basically try to fill time by talking about whatever floats into my brain. And hopefully, but I've also talked to people that are going through the deconversion process. I've talked to atheists, and last night I got into my first debate with atheists, which was interesting. So yeah, that was fun. Because one of the reason why I started doing TikTok was because I've been active in the atheist community for 3 years, and I tend to stay in my bubble because I tend to talk to other atheists and humanists. Yeah. And I was like, you know what, Helen, you're gotten really comfortable. You need to expand out.
Get out there. Yep.
Yeah. So
do you have like a Patreon or anything?
I don't have a Patreon or anything. Like I don't have my own channel. Like I am all over the YouTubes.
All over the place.
Yep. I am. So if you just put in Helen Green, Hell's Bells, whatever, I will come up.
And I'll link a lot of that stuff in the description after this.
But my major thing is doing the ACA stuff and the recovering from religion stuff. Because it's so that like recovering from religion is my main gig and the thing that I'm the most passionate about. But the side effect of that is that on the ACA side, I get to use my intellectual brain versus my emotional brain.
I don't know how to use that. I don't know how to separate those. I just have an emotional brain. That's it. That's all I have.
No,
I didn't know there was a difference.
Smart. Like you're a comedy writer, and comedy takes a lot of intelligence and cleverness. So,
Thanks.
So I mean, like I can't write jokes. I just say whatever pops into my brain. But like if you were told me, Helen, write a joke, I'd be like, fuck you, man. I don't know what the hell to write.
You'd be good at improv, though. I bet you'd be really good at improv. I feel like that's like right up your alley.
That's an ADHD brain scale. Yes. Like I feel like a lot of comics are ADHD because they get to just say whatever floats into their brain. They just have to find a pattern that works.
They just have to they just have to figure out how to channel it, and then you're good. Well, Helen, this has been really fantastic. I've loved getting to hear more of your story. I feel like I've gotten snippets of it through all the things we've been involved in together, but I was so glad I got a moment to just like really sit down and hear it from your first person's perspective. I really appreciate everything that you do with recovering from religion.
I gotta promote when you're going to be on our podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to be on your podcast.
Yeah, hold on. Let me look up the date. Hold on, unless you got it on your calendar.
I may have it right here, actually. I think. Let's see. I am going to be on yours at on this Sunday.
Monday.
That's
not to the Valley, which is not a thing anymore.
Oh, that's right. No, you're right. Then I'm going to be, I think it's in August.
We're so professional right now.
We're super professional.
Hold on. I can pull up our calendar. I have access to our calendar.
I was going to say, I don't know that I wrote that date down. Maybe I did. I feel like I did.
Hold on. I know. I'm pulling it up right now. You are going to be on.
I feel like it's on my Google calendar, but not on my paper calendar.
I think are you going the 24th? No, that's Lindsay.
I don't know that we set up one yet.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I lied.
Yeah. Well, I forgot that was Left of the Valley. I was thinking that. So I've been thinking that was us this whole time. So we'll put something together and then we'll tell the audience when I'm going to be.
Yeah, we'll do. We'll do a live stream and then we'll announce it. That's how it'll work.
Well, yes, absolutely. That's how we do it here. We tell you I'm going to be on it and then we don't tell you when. And then later we tell you when. That's part of our thing. That's our vibe.
To be fair, I talk to so many people and I always invite them on because I know so many activists and I'm like, you should come on our podcast and talk about your journey or whatever you want to talk about that has to do with recovering from religion. And then sometimes I forget to book them.
Yeah, no, totally. I have that exact same conversation with people. And if I don't send them my Calendly link, I forget every time. So I'm right there with you.
That's okay. We had the date and the day wrong.
I had the entire podcast wrong. I just had, but ladies, gentlemen, friends in between, if you've watched this live stream and you enjoy Helen's work, please find some of it down in the description below. Find them on TikTok. And then also, if you happen to be a supporter of this channel or you're interested in supporting this channel, as I mentioned earlier, in case you weren't here, all of the proceeds that we earn through the end of August are going towards I Am Dying Out Loud by Dave Warnock to help, people who have ALS and just go to a good cause. And then we always will pick a different cause once the end of August hits. And the most important thing, though, if you take anything away from tonight, I want you to take this away. Fuck Bill Gothard and
fuck him.
Fuck Bob Jones University.
Fuck him.
If you remember nothing else, just those two things.
Yeah, those are the only two things you know.
That's all you got to know. Fuck Bill Gothard, fuck Bob Jones University.
And fuck the IBLP as a whole.
And fuck the IBLP. And scene.